Let's talk about Nottingham Forest. Welcome back to another video, guys. As ever, drop a like and subscribe. Some more breaking news coming out of Nottingham Forest after a bit of a crazy week, to be honest. Steve Cooper has signed a new deal. He's extended his managerial contract at Nottingham Forest until 2025. Get your thoughts in down below. We're going to talk about what this could mean for Nottingham Forest and what I seriously think could happen for Forest this season. Let's look at how well they're doing in the Premier League so far this season. Can they turn it around? What upcoming games have they got? And is Cooper the man to keep them up? So first things first, my reaction to Cooper signing a new deal. I know some people were trying to pile on the pressure. I wouldn't say massive amounts of Forest fans were, but some people were trying to make this thing out as if Cooper had to go because Forest are bottom of the table. Let's be real, guys. Forest have just come up. They've got a pretty much completely new team gelling together. I didn't think for 1 second Cooper was going to get sacked anytime soon. And look at this, just to make sure, just to squish any doubts, to be honest, Steve Cooper has signed a new deal, and I think it's fantastic for Forest. Forest manager Steve Cooper has signed a new contract with the club until 2025. Cooper, 42, led the club to promotion. We all know that. We all know that. We all know how wonderful he was for them. Remember, he wasn't even there for the full championship season last year, and how many managers have gone in there since their relegation in 1999 and been unable to guide that club back to where it belongs in the top flight. Cooper did it in less than one full season. So, I think we all knew coming into this season, the Forest were a bit of an unknown. Some people thought they might do well. Some people thought they'd struggle. I've got to admit, I had a bit more optimism for them than it's looking like they're going to do this season. I think I've overestimated them. But let's be fair, it's early on, and let's talk about how they're doing so far. So, my thoughts on Cooper staying are, I think it's the best thing for them. I don't think any other manager could be doing much better in this instance. Yes, they're bottom. Yes, they could have picked up a couple more points here and there. Okay, some of the performances have been shambolic. But to put it all down to Cooper is a bit unfair. Let's be honest and look at the transfer window. The amount of players they signed is almost unprecedented. Cooper will take margins of the blame for where they are now, but I don't think you can say he deserves to be sacked for the position they find themselves in now. Like I say, they wouldn't be in the Premier League without Cooper, so it's only fair he gets the full season, really, to show what he can do with this club. Let's have a look at why they are bottom of the table. Let's go through all of their games. Starting with the defeat to Newcastle. I've watched quite a few of Forest's games. This one was... It was disappointing. Forest were outgunned by a Newcastle side which are surely going in the right direction, I think we'll say. So, to lose 2-0 and hold them to 0-0 for an hour wasn't a disaster. I think Forest did as well as they could and they didn't disgrace themselves. The next game was the first home game, and I've said this could be something integral to Forest staying up this season, the home form. They ground out a 1-0 win. Yes, they hung on at times, but it shows resilience at the back. Iwaniyi getting the goal and Henderson saving his first penalty in this game from Declan Rice. They did hang on at times, but a priceless win nonetheless. I watched them when they went away to Goodison, nearly pinched it. I think it was probably an even game. Forest could have won it if you look at how the game played out. Johnson scored his first Premier League goal 9 minutes from time, only for Everton to score 2 minutes from time, and the points were shared. At this point, you're thinking 4 points from 3. They're above a point per game. Things are looking pretty good for Nottingham Forest. It takes a bit of a nosedive after this. After, of course, the Grimsby game, which they won 3-0 in the EFL Cup. I don't think people are getting too drawn into that because the priority for Forest is staying in the Premier League. But a good win there nonetheless. They lost to Spurs 2-0. Once again, this isn't a disaster. Henderson saving a penalty again, but Harry Kane did have the last laugh, scoring twice. Forest gave it a go. They had chances. I feel like if they'd have got a draw, Spurs might have felt a bit hard done by, but Forest certainly held their own in that game, and they're up against the top 6 side there. You can't read too much into that. The next one as well, I'm not making excuses for Forest, but it's Man City away. If you come out of there losing 4-0, it's a pretty good scoreline. So losing 6-0... it's not great, but it's not the end of the world either. You're not going to be judged on those games at the Etihad. Let's move on to September. Like I say, it's starting to look a bit worse here because they lost at home to Bournemouth. Now, this was really bad. It's a newly promoted side, and they were 2-0 up at half-time. Koyate and Johnson, and then Billing, fair play to him, what a goal. Solanke, and the Anthony goal, what a disaster for Forest, losing that one late on. They needed to bounce back in the latter stages of September. Their game against Leeds was postponed. That was the weekend, the week that the Queen passed away. And then this is not good either. They lost at home to the other newly promoted side, Fulham. And once again, they took the lead in that game. Iwoniyi, who's been chipping in with goals. O'Brien did pull one back after Fulham scored 3 in 6 minutes. You cannot do that in the Premier League. You might get away with conceding 2 in 5 minutes in the Championship. In the Premier League, if you concede 3 in 6 minutes, you're done. You're not going to get anything out of it. And let's give Fulham credit because they're doing pretty well. Moving into October, they've only played Leicester, but this is the one that's really made me worry. And like I say, this is the one where people tried to pile pressure on Steve Cooper. Yes, Leicester were bottom, but Leicester, I don't think, realistically, are Leicester going to finish bottom? I wouldn't say so. I mean, they could be in the battle for survival, but the quality of Maddison there, too much for Forest. Forest, once again, did have their chances. Iwoniyi should have scored in this game, but they fell short drastically, losing 4-0. Let's have a look at some of the stats then. Let's move this so you can see on the right hand side above my head. The Forest players with the best ratings. No one's recorded a 7 average rating, which isn't great. Nico Williams is coming out on top though with a 6.93. Aurier with a 6.9. This is average rating, by the way. So some players that have played less games might be higher than players that have played every game. Lewis O'Brien up there. Joe Worrell. Dean Henderson, I've got to say, is one of the players that's kind of kept Forest in most of the games, to be honest. Ryan Yates, Brennan Johnson, Morgan Gibbs-White, Harry Toffolo, Jack Colback, they're all doing okay. Looking at these stats on the right hand side, matches played 8, goals scored 6. That's a cause for concern, under a goal per game. 21 conceded, Jesus. Now that is another cause for concern. They're close to 3 conceded per game. Goals per game, yeah, 0.8. Goal conversion, 7%. Penalties scored 1 out of 1. But like I say, one of the positives is, of course, Dean Henderson has kept out 2 penalties, which is very good. So let's look at this table then, to the side of me. I've been doing my research coming into this, and obviously one thing we could tell straight away is Forest, it's not good enough. This is not good enough. It's 4 points from 8. That's half a point per game. That'll get them 19 points this season. That's never going to be enough. As I say, I've done my research, and if you look over the last 5 seasons, working out the average points needed to just survive by the skin of their teeth, which I'm sure Forest would take at this point, it's about 35. Now, there was this myth, and it probably was true 10, 15 years ago, you need to get to 40 points to survive. That's not necessarily true in the Premier League anymore. I'll tell you why it's not true, because the teams at the top, their quality is improving, they're losing less games, therefore the teams at the bottom are mustering up less points. So if Forest get to 35 points, they'll probably finish 17th or 18th. Can they get to 35 points? There's a long way to go. They've got 30 games and they need another 31 points. And as I say, 35 might not guarantee it, but it could be enough. That is just over a point per game. Forest need to start crawling just above a point per game, which means obviously more wins needed. They know 1 win in 8 is not enough. Let's look at Nottingham Forest's fixtures. One thing I will say coming into these fixtures, where there's a mixed bag, some so-called easier games, some harder games. I will say as well, there's no easy games in the Premier League, but you get my point. This deal for Steve Cooper could inject this positivity and lift that the Forest fans needed after this recent run of games. And one thing I've said, and I'll say it again, is Nottingham Forest, their season could be determined on these home games. Yes, they'll need points on the road this season, but that Aston Villa game, the next game in the Premier League, is a big one, because if they win that, let's jump back to the table, they could come out of the bottom 3. They'll at least come off bottom if they win that. Is a draw enough? Probably not, with the pressure they've piled on themselves. Like I say, looking at these games, it's all about how many points can they accumulate before we get to the World Cup. Aston Villa at home is not necessarily an easy game, but looking at the games coming, it's one of the more winnable games. Wolves away, once again, isn't impossible for Forest to get something from, but Forest have struggled to get points on the road. Brighton away, now that is a tricky one. Brighton are certainly doing well this season. Liverpool at home, I think we all know Liverpool aren't their fluid best at the moment, but they've still got the quality to beat bottom 3 teams. And you've got Arsenal away, which is probably the free hit in October. A quick little look into November, we'll see. They've got Brentford at home, Spurs at home in the EFL Cup, and Palace at home. I think we know Forest fans would probably go out of this competition if it means they can pick up some points in these Premier League games. It is massive, these upcoming weeks for Nottingham Forest. If we jump back to that table, I don't think it's impossible Forest survive. I think the bookies and many people that do predictions would say Forest are in that position where it's irreversible, but things change in a space of a week or two, and it certainly is reversible in my opinion. You see Leicester there are actually on the same points after 8 games, and a lot of people probably still think Leicester can survive. I think the thing with this Forest team is they need confidence, and that team really does need to gel. They need to find their favourite 11. There's sometimes I look at the 11 that's been picked and I think, is there better players on the bench that could be starting? Perhaps, but there's big games coming and they need to find that formula because as we know, the Premier League is not very forgiving at all. Let me know, guys, do Forest survive? I think the possibility is, of course, still there, but they're certainly putting themselves into a position where they've got a lot to do. Let me know, guys, down below what your thoughts are. As I say, do drop a like, do subscribe. It is positive news, in my opinion, that Steve Cooper is staying, but they need positive news on the pitch as well. I'll see you all in the next video. Peace out.